Hello, everyone. Welcome here.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's kind of a fun webinar this morning. Mark has gleaned through, Mark and I think Liz and maybe Elizabeth, certainly not me, have gleaned through a bunch of interesting community questions to kind of dig into some somewhat less trodden paths within FME and a bit of uncharted territory. And it was a lot of fun prepping for this ahead of time. And I think it's going to be fun today. What do you think, Mark?
I think it's going to be fantastic. Yeah, I think, well, we're going to answer some questions that we found on a community, but if anyone's got their own questions you'd like to ask, we can see if we can fit those in as well. That would be awesome.
We do not know the secret to the caramel bar. So I'll just cut that off right now. Elizabeth, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome everyone here to FME Fanatics Unite, a Q&A on the FME community's top selected user questions. So today I am joined by Mark and Dale. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
I am what we call the FME evangelist at SAFE, and I'm very busy on our community and talking to users wherever I can. So yeah, that's me.
And my name is Dale Lutz. I'm one of the two co-founders of SAFE, and I just feel like I have to share a story of the first time we interviewed Mark. Back then, Don and I actually interviewed people like Mark. How many years ago is it that you joined?
Ooh, I think it's coming up to 20 next year.
And Mark said to me that he wants to become an expert in something. And I've reflected on that often. And Mark, I believe you've achieved your goal, and it's a true honor to work with you on a regular basis. And thank you for all you do for the community. And now today we're going to share some of that expertise Mark has gathered over all these years. And we won't, maybe if we have time at the end, we can talk about the cinnamon buns and the earthquake drill or whatever it was that happened.
Yes, that's right.
At your interview, but not now. We'll save that for the end.
Yeah.
To our agenda here.
Yeah. So today, I mean, I guess you're going to do the introduction, Elizabeth, and the SAFE and FME part, and then we're going to dive into some community questions. Most of the ones that we got are ones that haven't been answered. We especially looked out for those so we could add some knowledge that didn't seem to be known out there. So, yeah.
Live action demos. That means Mark is, I use the phrase which a few Albertans may recognize, Mark's going to be the fastest tone arm in the West. And that's a reference to something from Alberta that hopefully one person knows. But anyway, we are going to be trying to go a little off-roading. I was up late last night and prepped one that Mark's going to walk us through too. So it should be a lot of fun. And then, as it says here at the end, if we have time, we'll take some questions and see if we can do some improv on the scene. So that's always exciting. Although Mark and I have been stumped before with detailed questions on XML flattening and JSON exploding.
Yes. If I can blow our own trumpets, I mean, I think we're probably two of the most experienced people with Workbench and designing workspaces. But when it comes to the nitty-gritty of things like XML, maybe not.
As was said in the first Star Trek movie, their answer lies elsewhere. So I'm filled.
Very good.
All right. So just before we get started here, if you do have any audio issues, feel free to click that help button on the bottom left for 4 simple steps. Share your reactions with us throughout. You've already been doing that. Thanks, everyone. We do have quite a few polls upcoming, so we'll be using that polls tab there on the bottom right. The chat, keep letting us know where you're tuning in from there. And then the questions panel. As Dale and Mark mentioned, we will try to allow time at the end for some live questions. So definitely get those in throughout. And we'll have that session towards the end here. If you would like to download the deck, feel free to do that with the button on the top right, or you can click apps and handouts from there. All right, I will pass things back over to Dale.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. And yes, we are underway today with an interesting thing, and interesting webinar, and I'm breaking in a brand new computer, so I don't have a mouse that works, which is interesting. But here we go. We're going to be on a data integration journey today. And as was promised, we're going to look at some top selected by our panel of experts user questions that should help you unlock the potential of your data as we kind of go through a bunch of different scenarios. Now, not all of these will apply to most of you, but the techniques and the ideas we hope will be inspirational and broaden your understanding of FME. So we got the first poll. Elizabeth, can you roll the poll?
We do, yes. So we'd like to know how active you currently are in the FME community. cast your ballots there and we'll check that out.
And
Yeah.
Mark, I didn't look it up, but do we know when the concept of an FME community started? I think it might have even been before you were at SAFE. Is that right? That the original FME list?
Yes, it was. It was a few years before I started, and that was on it was a Yahoo group when I first started. I don't know if there was something before that.
That was actually the third place. Like we were at something called eLists, and then it moved to something else, and then it got bought by Google. So the Google group was actually the third incarnation of that thing.
It was a Yahoo group, then a Google
Right.
group, then it got a bit more professional after that.
Yeah.
But really, the community I like to think of as being anywhere that people talk about FME. So there's going to be a few questions today from Stack Exchange.
Yeah.
There's also questions appear on Reddit and the spatial community on Slack as well. That's another place that I see
you pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's not a lot of super active folks on this call, so thanks everybody that is joining in and for taking the time, and we'll hope that you are rewarded for this investment of your time as we explore some areas of the community. Just a couple words. We are, I know, preaching to the choir today. A few things about SAFE and FME. The one on this bubble that I wanted to highlight is that Mark has verified this, about almost 30,000 people have signed up. Yeah. Which is an astronomically large number. I like to joke that the sun never sets on the FME community. We have people from all corners of the earth. I probably shouldn't say that. As a mapping company, we shouldn't imply that the earth has corners.
One thing, we're actually looking at a new community platform right now, and we looked at how many unique visitors we get to the community a year. Did you hear that number, Dale? Did you?
I have not heard this number.
Do you want to make a wild guess how many unique visitors we get a year?
Unique visitors? Okay, that would include people that stumble in there from a Google search.
Yes.
That aren't members. So I'm gonna guess 30,000.
Ooh, you're a bit out, a magnitude out. Google Analytics tells us it's 800,000.
What?
But I think
almost a billion served. They were as good as McDonald's.
Nearly a million, but yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm off by 1,000. Yes. But anyway.
Yeah, I think half of those we think are bots, but we think there's a good solid 300 to 400,000 unique visitors a year.
Wow.
On the website. So yeah, that's fantastic.
Yes. Good. And so anyway, that's a couple of words about us. And of course, we have FME that we all know and love. Most of you on this call, we could have asked who here doesn't know anything about FME at all. I would think it's pretty few. But if you don't know much about FME, wow, are we glad that you joined today and hope that we help you learn some things. But we have our 3 pieces to FME, the FME Forum, which AKA formerly known as FME Desktop, FME Flow, which was FME Server, and Flow Hosted, which is cloud. And not making the top tier here, we do have a couple of mobile apps, but specifically we have an interesting AR app, which is going to be the excuse for many safers to get those fancy Apple goggles when we can smuggle them across the border into Canada next year. So it'll be fun doing a webinar in the goggles, I think. So,
yeah, it will.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a couple of words on that. And with that, we're jumping right into it. And Mark, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, the first question was one that got asked on Stack Exchange. It was, how do you connect multiple input feature types from a reader and route it into a single transformer? And I just wanted to share this one today because it's got so many upvotes there. I figure that lots of people must find this interesting, how it works. So let me share my screen. So there, you should be able to see my FME now.
Yes.
I'm going to add a data set to here. Let's, I'm going to add OpenStreetMap, I think, because I seem to remember, if I can find where my data is.
Does OpenStreetMap tend to have a lot of feature types?
Yes, exactly. And even if we don't have all the feature types in the data, FME will still create them.
Oh,
I think there's an option there. You can say scan the entire data set, but I'm not worried about that now because I actually want lots of different feature types.
If you scan, we will actually look and see. If you don't, we just pick up from the schema. And this is all, there's a big, a load of them, as we would say in Australia.
Yes. So now we need to pick a transformer. Say we want to do something with that. Let's see, we'll put a I don't know, a 2D Forza transformer. That's my go-to. So the question
Slamming it
is,
all down.
yeah. So the question is, how do we connect all of these feature types to that one transformer? And there's a few ways of doing it. Obviously, we don't want to do one connection at a time because we'd be
You
there
could be
all
mining
day.
ore. You could. It's like mining ore. You like in a role playing game of some kind. You
Yeah.
can just sit there and go clickety click click click.
Exactly. But instead, we have a window called the feature type connection window.
Yep.
And that lets us basically connect different objects that are on the canvas. So here, the easiest way is to select all of those feature types, select the Forza, 2D Forza, and hit connect.
Wow.
And there we go. They're all connected. And we can even see the connections on the right. We can even say, okay, let's disconnect a few of those. And yeah, it's a very simple way of making connections, especially useful when you've got a very large workspace and perhaps you can't see the two objects you're trying to connect at the same time. So you can open this window up and
It's little used, this window, but when you if you know about it, it is amazingly helpful to have, which was our dream. It's actually been an FME, like it was one of very, very early, about 2003 or so, somewhere in there it was put in. Now, Mark, can you just hop back? I want to just go off road with you a little bit.
Okay. Well, can I show one of?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the way of doing it is if you haven't got the transformer down already, you can just select everything and then type the transformer name, and then it will automatically connect to it. So that's the easier way. That's the newer way, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, you wanted to...
Actually, do you want to show that, Mark? Instead of a 2D Forcer, who is it? Suzanne said use a junction. So if you select them all and just type junction, which is the only transformer that doesn't end in ER. There you go.
Yeah.
And now the rest of your work can come after.
Yes, exactly. And that's a great way. The junctions are a great way to pull connections together.
So if we were doing clipping, do you want to just put a clipper down? I'm totally off-roading here.
You sure are.
And then these would become the candidates. So this is a common thing. You got a whole bunch of stuff that you want to clip. Somewhere else we're going to get a clipper. But now we've done the clipping. And what if we want to split it back out again? Can you put down a feature type? Is it called a feature type filter, I think?
Yes. There we go.
And if you connect that to the inside ones, now we got to configure it. And somewhere we can say update.
Yep.
And now if you say okay, Bob is your uncle.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So yes, the feature type filter is the way to get it back out again. That's for sure.
So that's the easy. The other choice, if you didn't know this, is you'd pop down like 80 clippers, route and be putting the same clipper into all of them, and then do this separately. Way less efficient, way more pain. This is a nice little pass-through way.
Yes, that would be a lot of pain.
Wonderful.
So there we go. That's how that question's answered. Although I think one of the other things we were going to mention was if you add the reader again,
yes,
you can use the single merge feature type as long as you don't mind all the data going in there. I'm not sure what that would do to the attributes, though. If they've not got the same attributes, that might be a bit of a...
You're right, Mark. It's a bad plan because if there are different attributes, they will get a merged version, like the union of the schema.
Yeah, so that one's got an aerial way attribute. That one's got a craft attribute. So that wouldn't necessarily be the best way of doing it, but you could do that for sure.
Yeah. And I see some good comments coming in. Yes, feature type filter will not work inside of a custom transformer. And I understand why that would be the case, but it's sort of annoying. And Carl, that's so interesting, your comment about feature type filter and feature reader. So that one we will highlight for the product managers, because I understand why that would be the case. And that's an opportunity for us. So lots of good product feedback.
Yeah. So the next one of that, we're going back to the slide. We did the demo. Why is the geometry filter harmonize and filter option no longer available? So that was an option that appeared in the geometry filter. Well, I think it was about 3 or 4 versions ago, and then it suddenly disappeared. And someone was asking, well, why did it disappear? And So let's have a look. Well, let's have a look at what it does as well.
So I asked ChatGPT about this, and ChatGPT denies this option ever existed, Mark.
Oh, really? Okay. Can I flip back to my screen easily?
There you go.
There we go. Perfect. That's how it's done. Okay, so we're going to add a reader. I think probably the best data set I've got is this geodatabase. Community mapping. Let's have a look in there. And so, yeah, the geometry filter, let's use that trick we learned before and move everything into that geometry filter.
Yeah.
Obviously, what that does is it filters things by the type of geometry you've got. And so we've got the option to do simple, or we can do detailed. And if we do detailed, we can say, oh, let's drill down into this data and sort of filter it into its specifics, like IFME face, ellipse, simple area, oriented arcs. I mean, these are all the geometry types, I guess, we support in our geometry model, which is quite incredible.
This is not your grandpa's geometry model.
Yeah. So if we run this, we should see that there are a bunch of, I'll zoom in a little bit to make it easier. We've got some points and we've got some polygons, and that's pretty much it. I'm going to throw an aggregator down and aggregate all of those features into, I think they were points to start with.
Yeah.
So now they should become a multi-point, and we can see that becomes a multi-point. So it comes out of the geometry filter as a multi-point.
Well done.
And I'm going to connect the garbage schedule in, and that's a garbage schedule of polygons. So that's going to give us a mixed.
Now, what do you have?
It's down here as an aggregate down at the bottom. And that's because it's what do we call it? Heterogeneous aggregate.
Yep. Yeah, these should strike fear into the hearts of most Esri users anyway.
Yeah. So it's not just points, it's not just polygons, it's a mixture of points and polygons together, and that's why it's an aggregate there.
Very few formats. I think you could write that to map info, but maybe some of the OGC simple features databases, but generally those things aren't that useful. So then what are you going to do about that, Mark?
Well, one of the options used to be to simplify that, and that option is no longer on there, and that's the one that the user was asking about. So how do we fix that? Well, actually, that option is no longer there because it's automatically built in to the simple mode. So if I change that to simple mode, let me do that. So in simple mode, we only have the very basic things like points, text, lines, whatever.
Oh.
You can see that we don't have aggregates in there.
Yes.
So when we run this, it'll basically split that data back into what it was. It will split it back into areas and points. And that's what that setting does. And really, it's built in there to the simple mode. So, yeah. So if you're looking for that parameter, yeah, it's there. It's on all the time in simple mode.
I guess I'll just say that behind the scenes, an enormous amount of work went into this geometry filter. That's a couple of releases ago, I think, to try to, first of all, deal with the most common things people might want, which is this default setting, the so-called simple mode. And again, our feeling was that because most of the world in some fashion or another ends up working with Esri data models, they don't support homogeneous or heterogeneous aggregates. So there really isn't a need for that in the sort of common case. And also the detailed FME breakdown of all the different geometry types, not as necessary either. So that's why the simple mode is nice and friendly like this. And then some people may need the complex mode, but it's a much rarer situation.
And when I said it was breaking it down, it's still breaking it back down into a multi-point and a multi-polygon. It's not completely deaggregating it like the deaggregator would.
Right.
So, but as you said, the multi-points is a lot more valid for a lot of different software.
Because most software doesn't care if you have homogeneous aggregates or the thing by itself. Like the islands of Hawaii are just happy to be in one feature. And that's really wonderful, that a multi-area. But where you get into trouble is if you have the islands of Hawaii and the volcanic volcano sites as points, all in one feature. Now you also have to ask, why would you really want to do that? But anyway, sometimes that's a thing.
We see all sorts of data all over the place, so it's not not completely surprising.
Nobody knows the trouble we've seen, Mark. Nobody.
Okay, well, that was that demo. How do we get to the next slide? There we go. So the next question was, I created a sample of the first 10 records in 500 plus database tables, or how do I create that sample? And then they wanted to write that to CSV as well. So, well, okay, well, we've got geodatabase. That's almost database tables. Well, it is database tables, really. So I guess the question is, how would we read the first 10 records from each of those? I guess one of the ways would be to put a sampler transformer down.
Oh,
do we? Oops. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. One way would be put a sampler transformer down. Do we have a group by in the sampler? Yeah. So we could group by FME feature type, and that creates the first 10 features. And that is a way of doing it. Yeah, so that gives us, some of those don't have 10 features in, which is why we've only got 74, but that's pretty much, the right thing. The problem with that is, of course, that we don't really want to read all that data if we don't need to read it, especially from a database. So the simpler way of doing that would be in the reader, there is a features to read option. And in there, we've got both maximum features to read and maximum features to read per feature type. And the feature type will be the one we want this time. So we want to say, let's just read 10 records for every table. Assuming there are 10 records. If there's not, well, then we get 6 or 8 or however many.
Yeah. And if you'd have set 10 on the max features to read, we'd have just read the first 10 from the whole data set, and that would have, who knows what that would be. And Elizabeth correctly asked, like, why would someone want to do this? And often when you're just prototyping a workspace, you want some of all the data, so you make sure all your paths in the workspace are kind of flowing, but you don't want to deal with the whole thing. Like Mark's example here is a relatively small number of features, but if you're working with huge volumes, which many of you are on a regular basis, this has suddenly become much more useful. And I actually, personally, Mark, I'd forgotten we had this per feature type like this. That's a great option.
That is, that's a nice option. Whoever added that, fantastic, love it. But yes, you're right. If we had 500 tables like that user and 1 million records per table, that would be 500 million records we'd be reading, so we don't want to do that. So that was that. Let's go on to the next question, shall we? We'll sort of skip the bit about writing to CSV for now.
So just lastly, Mark, before we leave this one, and maybe between Elizabeth and I, we can try to dig up the link. But if you really have 500 plus database tables, you probably don't want all 500 on your workspace there. So we aren't going to dig into it today, but the dynamic modes of FME where the data is kind of handled in a generic way and then split out. It's read in one place, written in one place, but under the covers, it turns into 500 plus are probably the way that one would want to do that. So if you look in the community for dynamic, I know Brian Pont years ago used to give a talk at FME World Tour, and there's a tutorial there and so on. I think, Mark, you've probably been involved in some of those tutorials as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's advanced, but it does make the data or the workspace a little harder to understand because it's not explicit what's going on. But I would argue that if you have 500 plus tables, you're into a different zone anyway. So you need to step it up to that kind of generic programming or dynamic mode of workspaces. So
the only thing I wonder about that is I'm not sure if you don't have each feature type listed, whether it will actually read 10 features from each feature type.
Right. I don't know the interaction of that, but you could, in the worst case, put down a sampler and then just group by feature type, which still reads all the data in that case. But yeah, that's true. So a few different things to consider there. I'm going to look for that article and see if I can find it while you carry on, Mark.
Sounds good. Let's find the next question, if I can do that. Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Actually, well, we're going to need you here, Dale, I think, because this is more a question for you.
Uh-oh.
And this is one that's come up quite a bit on the FME community. Can we create an FME server app that has dynamic user parameters? So, for example, if we're reading like we want to do something with our payroll, and we've got a list of people who work at SAFE, and you want to pick one or two of them out, can we make that dynamic from the contents of the database?
Yes.
That will be the question.
So it's funny. Once in a while, Dawn and I get to collaborate closely on some product design things, because this one pierces the veil between FME Flow and FME Form, because we need to support this everywhere. And the dream of a dynamic list where it's determined at runtime has been a thing for a super long time. And we're working with the development team now, because there's sort of a progression in terms of how fancy we want to make this, how easy it is for FME Forum people to make use of it versus FME Flow people. There's a bunch of different trade-offs to look at. I deeply want to see this, so does Dawn, so we hope we can do this. Our proposal is that we would have a mode on the choice GUI type, we call it a GUI type parameter type, that there'd be a mode on there where you say, get the values for the choice. Yeah, where is it? Here's it. You want to put down a choice for us?
Yeah. So here's a choice. Yeah.
And you'd have an option here where it would say, instead of where you have to type in the choices, there would be a URL to get the choices. So the idea is we'd go out, you wouldn't have that big box marks for mouses on right now. You'd be sort of able to flip that between a fixed set of choices and a dynamic set of choices. And if you're in dynamic set of choices, you give us the URL and then we go and get that. Now, if you're on Form on the desktop, you're going to have to somehow make sure that that URL is live, or you have your own little test server. And actually, when I was prototyping this, I fired up ChatGPT and said, write me a test server that will spit out JSON in this format that I can run on my local desktop. And sure enough, it wrote me the code and it worked. So you could do that for testing before you put it to Flow. But the idea is you make a workspace in Flow that returns a certain format of JSON that gets parameters that you've already filled in. It gives back to JSON, and now you have a dynamic list. And so the challenge we've got with that is about the security related to that. Or you could have us point to different URLs that are in S3, for example, where the JSON is sitting. And so I think, Elizabeth, we have a poll we want to ask folks. If you've followed with me about this idea of having a URL that's going to retrieve that, how important is security? Because that's one of the things the dev team came back and said, well, how are we authenticating to that URL? Remember, it's just going to return a list of options. So how important is that? So let's go to the polls and see what people say. What are our options, Elizabeth?
We have no authentication needed, might be nice, and don't worry, be happy.
Let's see. Well, I actually didn't put must have it. So that you can tell which way I'm tilted on this one. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to know how many people would actually use this or not. If you were within your own organization, you could imagine this is within a locally hosted on-premises FME Flow, then anyone that could get that URL that, say, produced the list of employees would be able to put that into their browser and get that. But of course, if you're outside your organization, you can't get in there. So that's the issue, is how do we deal with security around getting those choices? And let's see, the nice people are definitely, they would almost, that's a super majority, I think, isn't it, Mark? You could get something passed in the Senate with that.
Probably, yeah. I think 74% should, that should be a pass anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like we got some work to do there. We don't know how we could do this in an authenticated way, particularly. So we'll go back and put on our thinking caps and see what we can do there. So there, we won't have a demo today.
So one thing that I do have, and I've got a link there to it. Somebody asked me that before, and I made a really hacky version where one workspace ran the data and wrote it into another workspace.
Yes.
So it looked up the choice in the other workspace and wrote it into there, which I wouldn't really recommend. But I mean, it shows how far back people have been asking for this.
See, the thing is, if you have, sometimes you want the set of choices to be altered based on previous picks, but they aren't dynamic. Like, in other words, it's the provinces of Canada or the states of the United States that you can finally solve today with the conditional parameters.
Yes.
Because unless, the United States adds Washington, D.C. or Puerto Rico, that list isn't changing that often.
Yeah.
But in Canada, we added none of it, which we would have to update. But that was like 1 in 50 years or something. So those cases, what we don't have an answer for is the dynamic ones where it truly is live, like Mark said, based on an employee pick, because maybe we hired 5 people, we want them to be in the list. So
that's what I did with this one. But I mean, it's only semi-dynamic because you're writing it into a workspace.
Yeah.
So it's not happening at runtime, I guess. But
I know that Dave Campanis made a set of workspaces for defining coordinate systems that use that sort of technique, Mark, because, but that could be redone using conditional parameters today, because again, the types of coordinate systems are a fixed list and we could deal with that. But all right.
Okay. So next question was, excuse me, how do we group stream data into 1 minute, 15-minute intervals? And I, excuse me, I look back at this question again online, and they wanted to divide the data up into 1 minute intervals as it came in from a stream, and then write it out in 15-minute bundles to a CSV. So that's what was going on there. Let me find my computer again. There we go. Yeah, I mean, we could use some data from here, I guess. I didn't really do this before, but I mean, we're thinking the time window transformer, right?
Yeah, we love that. Yeah. That transformer is amazing.
Yeah. So I'm just going to rerun that just to make sure we've got some data. And I think, we're still, whatever, random number generator. We're going to simulate it coming in up to every, say, 10 seconds. And we're going to put a decelerator in. This is just me sort of simulating some data coming in as a stream. Again, this goes back to the idea of prototyping something. So there's the time window transformer. And let me see how that works. So window duration, what do we think? Like 30 seconds or something?
That'll be, if we're going to run it, it's going to be too slow. So let's go with like even just 5 seconds.
Okay.
15 seconds. And then we'll see, we should see stuff clicking out of that.
Yes. Let me turn that down to, say, 3 seconds.
Yes.
And see what we get.
I think you can use fractional seconds in the decelerator as well.
Right. Yeah. So we should be seeing features coming out. We'll have to wait a little bit. What the time window is doing is basically tagging this data with which 5-second period it belongs to. It's got a window ID on it, and the ID is window start time. And you can see 19 features, 20 features have come out, and 7 times the window has changed.
Right.
So we have, approximately 3 features per window going on now. And so that would be, I think, how you would do it as a basic method for.
So then So then presumably you would put a statistics calculator or something to summarize those windows, like however,
Yeah,
I forget the customer exactly wanted, but then what did they then wanted to do something every 15 minutes, I think.
15 minutes as well. Yeah, and I think what they wanted to do, I wasn't sure at first. I thought they wanted to split the data into 1 minute and 15 minutes, in which case I think we'd have to have two time windows
Yeah.
running in parallel.
Yep.
Yeah, with just different values in there, and that would work fine. I
Yeah.
think what they actually wanted to do, though, was take this data that was coming out at minute intervals and write it out as a 15-minute block. So we would have to say, take the first 15 windows and somehow write that out to a separate file.
If that was the case, Mark, I would put another time window where after this one that would assign a different group ID based on like a new window ID. And then I would do a feature holder after that would group by that second, the 15-minute one. So you can, if you want to just.
So yeah, that just finished. And so, yeah, we've got the window ID, and that the window ID could just be a basic number, or it could be actually the time number of seconds, which is what we got here.
So yeah, just try that, Mark. Put a different or another time window or afterwards. We won't actually run this.
Okay.
But, and then this one would configure for like that 15-minute interval.
Yeah.
And then you would use a different window ID attribute. You would call this the long ID or something, whatever it is that you want to say. Yeah, that's totally fine. And now I would say okay to that. Then I would put a feature holder afterwards. I really don't know why someone would want to do this, but do a feature holder. I think that's our friend. And there better be a group here.
Yes. Wow. Okay.
And then this one I would group by that second ID.
Okay.
And then, whoops, there's one more setting that's very important on the feature holder there. And that's complete groups when the group changes.
Changes.
And then that will do what we want. Every time that second ID goes wham, those ones will come roaring out.
Yeah.
So
gotcha. Okay, that sounds interesting. I don't think we've tried that, but that I don't see why that shouldn't work.
It's unclear to us why you'd want to do this at the end. Like, I don't know what, that the fact that we're whooshing them out every 15 minutes could be interesting. What I would actually, if I was really being wild, I would add don't do this, but I would add a feature writer that would also group by that second ID.
Right.
And then I could create a different CSV file for everyone.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And then I would use like a fan out of the data set. This is all, techno garble if you don't know, I'm sorry, but a fan out of the data set on that feature writer that involved that second time ID. And then you'd end up seeing your directory every 15 minutes, whoosh, you'd get another file like that. And then you'd presumably be doing something downstream. Anyway, lots of fun.
Yeah. The odd thing, I don't know if we really want to get into this too much, but the odd thing about this is it only releases the features once the next window comes in. So it's always sort of one window behind. But
that's right.
That's as long as you're not writing it out on a live basis, then that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, because the feature holder has to wait for the group to change before it releases things. And
to answer one of the questions that came up about that, yes, that was a cat that just walked past me. So that's
a burning question from the community.
Absolutely, that was Bojack the cat. So
Bojack,
yes, like BoJack Horseman, but this is Bojack Cat.
I know that the Calgary Stampeders quarterback used to be Bo Levi Mitchell. But you're not a big CFL guy, Mark?
Not so much, no. But
okay, what else do we have?
Okay, what's the next question? Can you forward the slides, Elizabeth? Because okay. This is one of my favorites. How do we use FME to remove columns with all empty or null values? And I think really there was a number of meanings towards that. If you look in that question, I sort of say, what do you mean, like remove it in what way? Do you just mean like make it sure it's empty, turn it to null, something like that, which we could do?
Strike it from the record,
easily?
Mark. Strike it from the record entirely.
Yes. And it only occurred to me earlier this morning that we did actually do something like this in the training course at the last user conference. So I thought, let's run this and we'll just see what it does. But the idea here is that we're reading this data from a market thing. So we could say, if everything was null, we could turn it to missing. I think we talked about this yesterday when we were prepping for this. So there's the null attribute mapper. Yeah. So if it was just sort of null or 0 or something, and you didn't want a value in there, you could say, well, let's just map it to missing, and then it wouldn't exist anymore.
Which effectively, mapping to missing means we remove the attribute entirely from the feature. It's gone.
Yeah. So we say if market name, actually, no, let's not pick market name, because let's see, number of vendors, because some of those do have null values. If we run that now, we should find that it's missing and not null. Yep. And so if we click on that, you won't see it in the feature information window anymore.
But it's still there on that third row. Of course, it'll be there. You have to click on that one. Yes.
Yeah. But missing means it's not really even on the schema of that feature. If you just took that one feature and looked at the schema, it's not really there.
Yes.
And that's really how we solved this problem that was being asked. In this case, we were looking at the attribute manager and we removed a couple of attributes in the training. But say we just set the value to null or missing. Let's set them to null. Yeah. So now we've got, So now we've got, so what I did, we took the open and close hours, we merged them into an hours attribute and then just got rid of open and close. But in this case, we're just changing them to null. And the idea is we say, okay, well, we don't want to write that data to the output anymore because those don't exist. So how are we going to do that? And how are we going to do that in an automatic way that we don't need to worry about going into the feature type and editing it every time we do something like that?
Mark, is it the case that the schema scanner will still pick those up because they are there, they're always null, but the schema scanner will faithfully say, you know what, there's a couple of columns here?
It depends, yes. So what we're doing is we've got the schema scanner, scans what the schema is and passes it to the dynamic writer and say, okay, this is the structure we want from the data that's coming in. And what we can do is we can say, if something is missing, null or empty, then ignore it.
Kaboom.
Yeah, so if I run this now and look what the schema it gives me, it doesn't have an attribute for open and close because we said, if something's null, ignore it. And that was totally null. But we do have ones for months and number of vendors, I believe, because they weren't totally null. Some of the records had values in there. So that's what we've done there. So and just to show you how that works in the output, we set the output to dynamic and we say the schema comes from the schema feature. And we're writing data now that should not have, let me open that up. It's opening in a different window. There we go. So we don't have the open and close anymore because we got rid of that. Whereas if we said, don't ignore that and just use default data types, then it would keep them in there. So basically we're saying if something is completely empty, then just get rid of it from the output. We don't really need it. So
I don't know who spec'd that, and I'm serious, I don't know who, but that was a brilliant option on the schema scanner.
Yeah, that was fantastic, yes.
Well done, anonymous, safe developer.
Yeah. So that's how we would do that. And I think I did it for somebody else before where we even did a group by on the schema scanner.
Ooh.
And said, let's group by, I don't know, what data have we got in here to group by? I think, oh, we could group by the day that it's open.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So we can group by the day that it's open.
I'm scared, Mark.
And now we can say we'll ignore null data types, but not all of them necessarily be null. Some of them might be. So we've got 3 different types now: Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday. Saturday doesn't, let's see, how many fields has that got? That's got 6, that's got 6, that's only got 5.
Right.
So all the features on Sunday must be having an attribute that's null. If we look at it,
number
on
of vendors, maybe.
Yeah.
No.
Sunday months. Yeah.
We don't know the months of the Sundays.
Right.
A month of Sundays.
It's open. Yes. So that's why it got dropped from that and not from the others. And if we wrote that, we'd get 3 CSV files, all with different schemas. So, yeah,
I'm reminded of the song, Mark. Oh ho ho, it's magic.
It is, and that's really just to demonstrate the schema scanner, because that really is a magic transformer. It's fantastic.
Immensely powerful.
Yeah,
and
it sure is.
We should ask the audience, has anybody used the schema scanner? Do chime in and let us know, and we'd love to know the reason why. Just go ahead with that. But while that's going, let's go to the next. We got 11 minutes left, Mark, and 2 questions. We're going to be in good shape.
Hopefully we can get it finished. Can you advance the slides again, Elizabeth? I'm not.
Yeah, no
problem.
problem.
No, I can see where to do. Oh, yeah. I think this one comes to you, Dale, because I wasn't sure how we would do this one. I thought this should be possible, but it wasn't clear to me how it would be possible. Yeah,
it wasn't. I think if you read into the question, the idea is that the customer in question has a large number of clipping polygons. They got like a huge data set of clippers, and they just want to not reread that whole thing every time they are doing some processing. So it wasn't exactly clear, like when they say batch processing, does that mean they're going to be running the same thing every 2 days and a different set of input data coming in one set, but the same set of clippers? So I couldn't quite tell exactly what they were getting at, but if we go to the workspace that I prepped last night, Mark, the one that starts with clip.
Okay, sorry, I was just answering a question while we were.
Yeah, that's okay. So I let's see, clip sum is a good one, I think, too.
That's the one.
Yeah. So you can.
Your workspace layout's not going to win any awards, I'm afraid, Dale. But
am I being chastised? We should clean this up for people. So, for example, Mark, humor everybody and show them how on the clipper you can move the clipper down to the down one.
Right, so we've got the 2 input ports there. We can move those around. We can just right click and say move that down, and then we don't get the crossing line there.
It was just the anniversary of Ghostbusters, and that's where we don't want to cross the screen.
Exactly, yes.
So what I did here was I'm reading a bunch of Roads of Australia. You can go ahead and run this, Mark.
Can I run that? Okay.
Yeah, if you have the data there, I think it should go.
Yep.
So we're reading these roads with any luck. And I put them in my favorite new format, the flat GeoBuffer. That's a new FGB. It's a new format in this release of FME. Is it going or what?
It's running, yes. It's just...
Okay, maybe your computer, maybe you need a Mac,
actually. well, that it did occur to me that you're running on the Mac with the M1 chip or whatever it's called, and I'm not.
Yes. Yes, I'm shocked to see how slow this is for you. Sorry, because anyway, what I'm doing is reading.
I'm going to stop that, perhaps. Should I? Or should I have kept going?
I think just let it go. I'll just talk to it. In the end, what I'm going to do is sample all of this. Oh, I know what you could do, Mark. Because it's so slow for you, go ahead and stop it. And I was just sampling the first 3 features anyway. So go to Aussie Roads and let's only read the first, let's say the first 5, just to prove we're doing something.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, now let her rip. This should be dramatically faster.
Right.
I would hope.
See, prototyping, we should have realized to do
yes.
that.
And well, we'll see. Maybe Aussie Roads. See, it could be that the reader is just slower on. But anyway, we'll let it keep thinking. And so I'm assigning each of them an ID. I'm sampling the first 5, and then what I'm doing is taking the roads and going to a feature reader. And if you want to pop up the gear on the feature reader, what I'm doing is saying, all right, I'm only going to read the clippers that that intersect. And I've turned on in the constraints the spatial filter that says initiator intersects results.
Got it.
And so basically so I don't read all those, like this data set of the Australia areas. There's about 400,000 of these. I'm not sure if they're census polygons or what they are. There's a huge number of them. And so I'm only reading the handful that I'm going to need for the clipping and doing that over in each one. Right. So that's the idea. Use the feature reader and only read what you need. And if you take a look with your inspection there, Mark, on if we choose that one, choose that. Those are the areas that did intersect the roads we chose. And if you do a shift click, so not on those, because we only chose the first 3. So do the sampled ones. Yeah, so let's view the sampled ones.
Oh, there we go.
And then the Aussie areas with a shift. And those, whoops, why aren't we seeing? There they come.
There we go.
And so you can see there they are. And now after they're clipped, the some of those lines are going to be segmented. If you just click in there on the horizontal ones. Yeah. Because that's what I did. So that was the idea.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But the idea, in general, the idea is if you're going to read the same thing over and over again, can you avoid reading the whole thing? That's the feature reader, or should we at least make it into FFS or flat GeoBuff or some format that's known to be very fast?
Yeah, I like how you even had to add an decelerator in there because your computer's so fast. Just to show off. Okay, well, so not really batch processing as such, but it certainly should speed things up quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh, oops. I think we got Elizabeth, are you ready to roll the film? We got a little film to roll here. Let's see if she can do it for us.
All right.
Oh, yes.
We're talking about how can we control the order. So to get us ready. Order. There we go. That's to set the mood for this one. What do you got for us, Mark, on the example?
Well, to be honest, I didn't really have a pre-made example to do, so we're going to have a look.
This one, there's on the sampler. What if we said we wanted to go to the clipper before we go to the feature reader?
Yeah, like if we look at the sampled set connection runtime order, so we could do that.
Yep.
And we could say it goes to the clipper first before the feature reader. If we put the feature reader first, could we change it to clippers first? Do you think that would work?
It would, yes. Which in this case, because we have group by going on and the groups are small, wouldn't make too much of a difference. But Mark is right. By being clever with the setting of the order and then looking at when we want to flush groups and so on, sometimes that can make an enormous difference.
Yeah.
And in general, I would say that being aware of order is sort of an advanced topic. And in the modern world of bulk mode, sometimes the order isn't necessarily going to go. You might send 1,000 one place and 1,000 the other place in one shot. So the combination of bulk mode and this can get you into trouble. If that's the case, a decelerator of 0 will basically disable bulk mode. That's the trick. And then, see, there it is. Even in the usage notes, we've got that in there. So that's for ChatGPT to learn, and then I recommend that to people one day.
There you go. And the creators as well. I believe we can change the order of the creators. Is that?
You have to right click on them, I think.
Right click. That's it. Set creator runtime order. So we can choose which order to run things. I think in the question exactly that the user was talking about databases and doing certain things first. And I think the one you mentioned earlier, the feature holder, that's...
Yes.
That's a useful one because you can basically stop things processing at that point until
they
other
let loose.
data's come through and joins it
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah. So that's a case where, in some databases, you have a foreign key relationship, I think is what I'm not sure if that's the right term, but the idea is I need to write this table before I write that table. And so then I let the first table go out and I hold everything for the second table at the end when we're shutting down, then whoosh, the second ones come out.
And in fact, if we had a feature writer, say that was writing something, we could send the summary to there as well.
That's a way of kind of holding stuff.
Yes.
Yep.
And then this data would wait until that data's written and it's got the summary out.
Yeah.
And then you can write this one instead.
Yeah. That's right.
Instead, yeah.
And then now to be really clear, if that was really going on, Mark, before the feature writer, the last one, I would do some sort of a tester that would throw away that summary
Get rid
feature.
of the summary, yes.
Because it's now mixed in with the data. But you can win. There's many ways to win. Yeah.
So I think that.
All right, we got 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's.
So I know we've got a couple of polls left, and then we'll start answering questions because I really wanted to get these polls, sneak these in because we've got two important ones for me for the community that we're looking at doing some changes. Which of these new capabilities would you like to see on the community? Because we're looking at doing like direct messaging where you can message each other, an events calendar to show things that are going on, jobs board even, so we can highlight FME related jobs, release notes, language translations. That's an interesting one these days because obviously that's an AI type thing, but that should be possible to let users like look at an article in English and say, oh, I'd like to see that in French or German or Swedish or whatever. So yeah, I'm interested to know what you'd like to see the most.
I might be putting my thumb on the scale, Mark, but I would love to have a place to blog about interesting FME developments and interesting FME things that are not marketing related, but they are of interest to the actual users. And right today, there isn't really a place to do that.
That's
and
right.
So, when I retire and I'm beekeeping, I'll write blog posts. That's a reference to Sherlock Holmes. I think after he was done investigating, he kept bees. So
interesting.
I'm not sure I'm ready for that, but
okay. Well, there we go. That was that poll. So blog posts and events calendars are winning out there, which is great. I'd like to see the hub, the FME community be a hub for information coming in and out. But what really interests me, and I'm glad we've got Dale on this one today, this call today, if we integrated a community into FME Workbench, for example, what would you like to see there? Like, would you like to see a way to search the knowledge base? Would you like to be able to ask questions directly from in here? We could earn reputation points and badges for doing things like, oh, I won the Clipper badge because I used the Clipper. And then notifications as well. If we had sort of an inbox, I was thinking like you could log in and under help, you'd have an inbox where you said, oh, your question's been answered on the community. This is the answer that you've got. That sort of thing. So do you reckon they're feasible, Dale, some of those things?
Yes, I think because you can embed web pages in Workbench, all these things are fairly possible.
Fantastic.
I see that we are out of time, Elizabeth. Should we just whip through? Maybe I can just whip through the last bits here.
Sure.
As if you have to leave, folks, go ahead. But we'll just make you aware of a few things. Our ebook is floating around. You can grab that. FME Academy is a great place to learn more of the sorts of things Mark and I were talking about. And of course, there's the knowledge base that we've been referring to, and webinars. There's quite a library there, and I know Elizabeth has quite a interesting set coming up as well that you will want to keep watching and being aware of. In terms of next steps, you can get your community badge, MWPAF. So you can get that. Otherwise, get a hold of us or take the accelerator, again, which is a great way to learn the whole FME platform, get a sense of that. And lastly, if this type of thing excites you, what we just were doing, you can join literally hundreds of like-minded people in Germany, September 5 through 7, I think there's going to be closer to 200 sessions than 100, but I know that there's about 90 English sessions that I've seen the abstracts for that are absolutely fantastic. And so it should be really a wonderful gathering. We believe our largest FME user gathering of all time. And with that, I will say thank you for joining today. We may hang around a bit longer to do Q&A, but for me right now, I'll say thank you.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
It's been
fun.
Always great. Always great to talk with the community and answer the technical questions. I love doing that.
Yes. We can go back. I know I was going to make a joke about one of the webinars that's coming. When is it coming, Elizabeth? In the middle of July? July 19th. So we are ready to rehearse, just like Mark and I rehearsed this about 6 weeks ago, right, Mark?
Yeah, well, 6 hours, I guess. Well, a bit more than that. But.
Anyway, but that webinar, Elizabeth can maybe post the link to it, is going to be about custom formats. That's the bottom question. Can I create and use a custom format? And our guest on that one, Bruce Harold from Esri, is going to be showing some really interesting use cases of that. So tune in July 19th. It's a thing.
If folks want to hang around, shall we try and answer a few of the questions that got asked in the webinar?
I think it'd be fun. I personally have a few more minutes before my next gig.
Okay. Let's see. Does FME 2023 allow you to upgrade multiple transformers simultaneously? No, but I'm hoping that's coming up soon.
We saw it, our innovation days where people can work on anything they want to. This was attempted and looks like it was done by one of the team members. It always takes longer than to productize the prototype, but we did see an interesting example of exactly that. So I'm really hoping we can get that for either a .1 or else 2024, because it's right now there's just too clickalicious. So Chris, we do want to do that. So I'm going to say we started this, and then I'm going to say I'm done answering. It looks like that would be important to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so. It's certainly got a lot of upvotes here and on the Community Ideas Forum. So yeah. Well, this one here, I think we've answered this before. I think the junction transformer is the one that will do that, assuming that's the equivalent. I've never used Visio, so but yeah, a junction transformer should pull all that together.
And we are sitting on an interesting auto layout library that we may one day integrate. We also have the design team looking at some radical ideas for workspace tidying. As our now retired friend Mark Stokes would say, a tidy workspace reflects a tidy mind. That isn't actually what he said, but he said a tidy desk reflects a tidy mind.
I did see something else during the innovation days as well about reorganizing windows and how that was.
Yes.
That really looked fantastic. I'd love to see that. Be able to move the panels of like the navigator window and the log around and just have it a bit more intuitive, I guess.
Yeah. No, because there's a lot of different, like the wonderful feature connections window that you showed today, Mark, the feature type connections. In that new model that we saw prototyped, it could always be sort of docked sitting there out of the way, and then you just go in and bang, it's there without too much clicking. So so that would be quite revolutionary.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that makes it through as well. Let's see. How can I use a list like from Excel as a source of email recipients in an emailer workspace? I don't know. Is there a way, like if I flip to Workbench, does the emailer transformer not take an attribute as a...
So it's hard to know if Russell is still on the line or not. Is he talking about, the first thing is you can have two readers in the workspace. So you can have one reader that would be the data, that's the email template, and another reader that's your Excel list. And then if you wanted to send them all separately, you can just pump them through. Mark, if you just want to connect the email or just bogusly connect it to anything, if you pop that up, we can show how the to address, if on the to side, you could just choose an attribute value.
Yes.
And it would be bogus here, but choose any of these, like name.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Oh, well, that would have made more sense, wouldn't it?
But yeah, so that would let you do one at a time, and boom, 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 everybody gets their own individual email. Again, if you're reading from Excel and from the other other file at once. You'd have to join the email template onto every name record, right? Because here you're going to pick up the body also from an attribute. So you'd use some kind of a feature merger I think there's an unconditional feature merger, is there?
There is. Well, no, it's just a regular feature merger now will do that. You can just go into there and type like 1 and 1, and that makes a connection.
So that everything, basically in that model, this thing, the feature merger has 2 input ports. One of them, the requester, is going to be the name records from Excel that come through, 7 of them or however many. And the supplier is going to be the email template, which would then be transferred to each one of those requesters and the merge port. And then you'd have all the attributes you need. Yeah. So hopefully, Russell, that gets what you need there.
I'm just wondering about the 2 parameter. Is it possible to have a whole bunch of addresses in the same 2 field? If it's
I think you put
separated.
Semicolons. Oh, it's separated by commas.
Yeah, there we go. So really, you could probably merge all those people together into a comma delimited list.
And the one way I know, I don't really like recommending this, Mark, but I think the aggregator does that.
I think it would do that, yes.
Because you basically, it's if you pop down an aggregator, and then there's things in the aggregator that are for, and we did some work to make this faster. I know our friends at one of our key customers. Yes. Yeah, there you go. Separator character.
Concatenate, yeah.
Yep. And then you put the names, kaboom.
That would do it. I'm sure there's an attribute. What is it called? That joins it together. An attribute.
Well, you need to do many records at once. So it's going to have to be one of the grouping transformers.
Yeah, maybe I got that wrong, but I was sure there was one that would like concatenate things together, but it wasn't a concatenator, I don't think.
Oh, a list concatenator. That'd be another way. You could make a list and then concatenate the values. But again, the list builder would be the one that groups stuff together first.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that should be fairly straightforward to do, I think.
And 7 people want to know when we see the lizard. The lizard is always there.
Move my head and my camera takes a while to catch up. You can sort of see the zips behind me.
Yeah, but they're there in the background.
Yeah.
And we don't know when they come.
I'm sure we'll see them.
They're like the Easter cream eggs, which is another reference to Canadian commercials involving chocolate and Cadbury.
Yeah, I've got my lizard here. The lizard's always with us in spirit.
He's just behind the green screen.
Yes.
All right. I think we should let these last folks go, kind of like at the end of Ferris Bueller's. It's over now. You can leave.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And thanks so much, Mark and Dale, for all your work on this.
It's great. It's been fun.
Yeah.
And, thank you to everyone for attending and watching.
Bye for now, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, folks. Bye.